Thank you. So I probably won't be saying anything all that new to many of you here, because most of us are aware of the fact that Black women's bodies are often glamorized, they're often fetishized, but their actual relationships to their bodies are rarely theoretically nor are they empirically examined. And although they're often heralded as having this idealized view of their bodies and a comfort with their sexuality, for many Black women, their relationship to their physique is complicated and it's nuanced by narratives related to race, gender, and their intersection. So given this reality, positive embodiment is actually a difficult battle for those who actually achieve it. And their efforts are repeatedly challenged by mainstream narratives that view their bodies as deviant and lacking of value. And this is hardly new. Around 1812, Sarah Baartman was smuggled into England by her owner and a British doctor in order to capitalize on her very unique physical appearance. She was stripped and put on display in a cage. People could purchase her for private showings. And of course, many of these private showings were actually forced prostitution. And in 1814, she was then sold to a man in France who forced her to perform under even worse conditions. Months later, Sarah Baartman died at the age of 25. And a scientist claimed her remains, made a plaster cast of her body, dissected her brain, skeleton, buttocks, and genitals, and put them on display next to the cast of her body at the Paris Museum of Man. So Sarah Baartman was displayed and prostituted throughout London, Ireland, and France in life and in death because her large buttocks and her genitals were eroticized, they were fetishized, and they're simultaneously denounced as grotesque. And far from this being an event in our distant past, her dissected body and body cast were on public display for over 160 years. Now let's fast forward to today, because clearly this must be in the past, right? We don't do these things anymore, right? Well, many of you are familiar with tennis phenom Serena Williams. She's known for her unprecedented number of world championships, her unbridled strength, her unsurpassed serve speed, clocked at over 130 miles per hour. And in tennis, she is unmistakable. She is tall, she's beautiful, she has a muscular physique that is without rival among competitors, male or female, in the sport. Her body has garnered quite a bit of attention. Because one, she has a beautiful hourglass figure with an undeniably small waist juxtaposed against her curvy hips and her chest. But she admits to having struggled with negative body esteem. And this has been over a course of many, many years, and stemming from this belief that her body was too muscular, it was too strong, it was too masculine. And these negative feelings about her body were fueled by media coverage that both criticized her muscularity and her power, while simultaneously sexualizing and objectifying her hourglass figure. And in fact, this still shocks me. Her competitors have regularly, multiple times routinely, ridiculed and mocked her body. During tennis competitions and during the middle of exhibition matches, several different tennis players have stopped in the middle of a tournament in order to caricaturize Serena Williams by placing towels in their shirt and towels in their skirt or their pants in order to create this exaggerated chest and butt, and continue the match dressed in this manner for at least a few minutes. And this has been done by male and female tennis players, and among those who have done it, they have each done it multiple times. Not a single one of them have been reprimanded. In fact, when they do it, it is often to cheers and laughter. They are supported in the mass media, and no one has raised a question as to why is this okay. So although these two women have been separated by 2 centuries, The experiences of both Sarah Bartman and Serena Williams demonstrate the complicated ways in which Black women's bodies have been objectified, hypersexualized, and simultaneously critiqued as deviant. Intersectionality theory can help us understand or at least try to piece together Black women's experiences of embodiment. So a quick overview. Intersectionality theory posits that our social identities are interdependent, making the way in which we have meaning in one identity reliant upon our other identities. Intersectionality also attends to issues of power and how our social power and our relative social power to others creates hierarchies that create social context and can create one's social status. It also acknowledges that when you hold multiple marginalized identities, you are at increased risk for accrued disadvantages over time, increased risk for polyvictimization, and subsequent psychological and physical harm. So when you look at Black women's history, when you look at the objectification, the victimization, the marginalization, this sets a scene where Black women should not experience positive embodiment. Nevertheless, Black adolescent girls and women on average show greater satisfaction with their bodies than their white peers. They're more likely to endorse the belief that extra body fat denotes health and makes them more feminine. They report an ideal body size that is significantly larger than that reported by white women, and they describe being curvaceous positively. Black women are also more likely to reject the media images of the thin ideal, and they don't expect that their friends are going to hold them to those expectations, nor do they expect that future partners will hold them to those expectations. And when they've done research on preferences of Black men and boys, they seem to be correct that they are going to be supported in their community. But it's more than just the absence of negative body image. Black women on average report higher levels of positive body image and body acceptance compared to white peers. They have significantly less discrepancy between their perceived body and their ideal body. And this all together suggests that there are ethno-social specific norms that do shape how Black girls and women evaluate their body. And thinness just is less important to their self-perceptions of their attractiveness. So let's take a step back. The embodiment literature is focusing on white women, and as such, it's looking at things like the body ideal and the actual size discrepancies. But what if factors like body size, weight, what if these are not at the core of negative embodiment for Black women? I assert that Black women's embodiment is interconnected with colorism. This is prejudice based on the color of one's skin. It's interconnected with hair texture and with something called racial prototypicality, or the extent to which one's features, their nose, their lips, are more stereotypically Black or more stereotypically white. Now, centuries of racial oppression in the US has shifted Black women's beauty standards towards, or all women's standards, towards a white ideal. And this is characterized as a preference for light skin, wavy or straight hair, narrow noses, small lips. And these characteristics actually predict how Black women are perceived and how they are treated by out-group members and by in-group members. As a consequence of this, you see the effects on their self-esteem and their mental health, and these show up by preschool and they persist throughout the life course. So in contemporary times, when you look at magazine and television advertisements, you're still significantly more likely to feature light-skinned women and making light skin this prerequisite for Black beauty. When darker women are portrayed in the media, they continue to be caricaturized as obese, unattractive, and masculine. And when they are cast as beautiful, dark-skinned women are far more likely to have long, wavy or straight hair, narrow noses, and small to medium-sized lips. So the persistent message that even if you're a Black woman, beauty is still going to be defined by prototypical whiteness. Whether this is evidenced by their skin tone, evidenced by their hair, or their facial features, or some combination of the three. So as we think about moving the field forward, greater research is needed that expands our ideas about which variables are core to positive and negative embodiment, so that these factors like skin color, hair, racial prototypicality are included in that discussion. We need to incorporate cultural factors that may buffer the relationships between negative experiences related to the body, things like prejudice, discrimination, harassment, and disrupted or negative body image, as well as thinking about which factors might be protective for body image, things like racial identification and having a positive core sense of who you are as an ethnic person. We also need to continue to monitor these trends over time. This is critical because people of color are increasingly being brought into mainstream culture, so Black girls and women may begin to increasingly identify with Western standards of beauty, leading to increased rates of eating disorder symptoms among women of color. And similarly, although Black women and girls have traditionally shunned the thin ideal in media images, Black-white differences of endorsement of that thin ideal are narrowing. And Black girls are showing an increased vulnerability to the thin ideal, corresponding with an increase in media images of Black women moving towards this fit and skinny kind of ideal. And it's also possible that the images of Black beauty are going to morph to other kinds of unreasonable sets of expectation that most Black women will be unable to achieve. Things like incredibly discordant hip-waist ratios, right? So this might not be a focus on thinness, but it's nevertheless a concrete way in which they're distorted and their body dissatisfaction increases, and they suffer and struggle with positive embodiment. Finally, the research literature to date is largely silent regarding those Black girls and women who do actually study with negative embodiment, let alone active eating pathology. And this is despite the evidence that heavier Black girls appear to be experiencing the largest shift in negative indicators of body dissatisfaction and appreciation. So in sum, without an increased focus on the specific needs, not only are we running the risk of failing to identify risk factors among Black girls and women, but we may also fail to identify and promote the protective factors that encourage their positive embodiment.